Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you all for logging into the SikhRI Institute webinar today. My name is Gurvinder Singh and I will be hosting today's session. The presentation will begin shortly, but before we begin, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's event. I'll then provide some information on Sikh Research Institute and today's moderator before handing over for the main panel discussion. So what we're looking at today is the GoToWebinar attendee interface, which is made up of two parts. The viewer window on the left, which allows you to see everything the presenter will share on the screen, and the control panel is on the right. Within that control panel is how you can participate in today's event. So let's take a look at that. By clicking on the orange arrow, you can open and close the control panel. From the view menu, you can set the control panel not to auto hide when inactive if you prefer to, or if you prefer to always keep it open. The audio pane provides information on audio. By default, you would have joined the webinar via mic and speakers. By clicking on the audio setup, you can select your computer speakers or headset devices. If you prefer, you can join via the audio telephone and dial-in information will be displayed, including an audio pin. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please send them via the questions pane. Simply type in your question and click send. As a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded and everyone will receive an email within 7 days with a link to view the recording of today's event. If for any reason you experience any technical difficulties during the session and can't see the main presentation, for example, please don't hesitate to contact me, Sikh Research Institute, via the chat panel. If you do lose your internet connection or have to restart your computer during the session, you can always rejoin it by clicking on the URL that was included in the original registration email. Finally, at the end of the presentation, I will launch a testimonial and feedback window. We'd appreciate it if you can take a few moments to provide your feedback and comments on how this session went and how we can improve future sessions. I'll now provide some background to the Institute and also to Inderpreet Singh. Over the last 7 years, SikhRI has focused on community development through programs. So be it leadership development programs, developing visionaries, which has trained 5,100 people worldwide, or educational seminars which stop misinformation and has reached 365,000 globally. They also do K through 12 services which teach value and language skills and which has served over 48 schools, 700 teachers and 2,700 students. Now, Inderpreet Singh will be the moderator for today's panel discussion. And he is a high-tech industry professional with a zeal to learn and impart Sikhi. He's also a regular speaker at Sikh youth camps and retreats. He serves as an advisor to Sikh Coalition and is also the chairperson of SikhRI Board of Directors. Now, before we begin, I'll hand it over to Inderpreet Singh to say a few words on SikhRI and introduce the panel's discussions. We strongly urge you to make today's session interactive, and 15 minutes into the presentation, you will have the ability to start questions asked through the questions pane. In the side panel, please state your city that you're dialed in from and your question. And if you'd like to verbally ask your questions, please confirm that you do have a working microphone. And please all address questions to me so I can compile them for the panelists. Now, I'd like to hand it over to Inderpreet Singh to begin today's presentation.
Thank you very much, Gurvinder Singh. Gurvinder, you're going to change over the presenter screen? Yeah, 1 second, hold on. There we go. Everyone should be seeing my screen. Okay. So can everyone, can you guys hear me well? Maybe Gurvinder?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So before I actually even start on the actual panel discussion for today, I thought we'd go over one thing which I was asked to share is the upcoming Civic Leadership Retreat. As Gurvinder mentioned in his introduction to SikhRI, Sikh Research Institute, one of our flagship programs is the Civic Leadership Retreat. This year it's taking place from 5th August to the 19th of August, and it is in its 10th year of being presented. This is a unique leadership development retreat tailored towards primarily college students and professionals. It's an intensive immersion in Sikh culture, language, values, and community development through the heightened understanding of what, all programs of SikhRI are related to Bani, Gurbani, Dwarik history, and Rahat discipline. The application deadline is coming up in about 2 weeks on January 15th, and I'd like to personally invite everyone who is here on the webinar today to go to www.sikhri.org and just do a search on Sidak. We also have another web URL, which is www.sidak.org, where you can get all the information as well as the application forms. So when you do go and register, you'll be asked to choose one of 3 tracks of studies: SikhRI 101, which I'm the lead instructor for, SikhRI 201, and Gurmukhi 101. And the first half is spent on very specialized classroom sessions, first half of every day for 2 weeks. And then in the afternoon, there are different guest lectures. By the way, one of our panelists today, who I will introduce, Navkiran Kaur, was such one guest lecturer at one of our Sidaks last year, and we're really glad to have her continue on in doing this seva and working with SikhRI. But it's not just all lectures and classrooms. There's also fun time as well. There's also a talent show, ultimate frisbee games, chance to take walks in a very interesting part of Texas, San Antonio, get home cooked meals, and a trip to downtown San Antonio. A trip to the Alamo is also all part of this. So once again, I think if this makes sense for you or your family members or your friends, please do encourage them to attend. It will be a fun-filled yet very educational time to get to know each other as individuals, activists, and thinkers. Without further ado, let's go ahead and start this session for today. Those that have been to webinars in the past know it's usually one person speaking on a particular topic. This time, however, I'm primarily going to be a host, but I promise you I'll be going over 1 or 2 slides, not more than that. And we're going to hear from our distinguished panelists who are chosen for a particular reason. The whole session, however, it's really about, and if you can see my mouse, this inherent sovereign spirit that exists within Sikhs and within Sikhs' daily life. Where is it right now in the context of our history, in the context of the 1984 happenings? We're not going to go into the details or informational session on 1984. There's plenty of info regarding that available. But suffice it to say that really a recent happening in 2012, what we are calling just simply the Rajoana episode, is that really a tipping point for the revival of the Sikh sovereign spirit? Or was it, as I will show you in the next slide, just another historical blip in the cyclical cycle of prosperity and protest that the Sikhs have been through? And before we get into that historical analysis, let me also set the context straight that everything that we're going to talk about today, that Sikh historians have presented, our community and its identity, it all emerges from this one idea of Ik Onkar, this one universal integrated force. Many of you have probably heard the Gurbani tuk Man tu Jod Sarup hai, apna mool pachan, Man harji tere naal hai, Gurmati Ramman. What emanates from Ik Onkar and then these type of, the revelations and Gurbani of the Gurus is that there is a sense of empowerment, a sense of a sovereign spirit because of this oneness of Vaheguru that is within all. When that Vaheguru is one, is integrated and within all, there's no chance for distinction of any caste, creed, etc. But then there's this force idea that also exists over there. Another aspect of this Ikonkar, many times people will say, "Bhai, gal na karo, do whatever you want in the Gurdwara, but please koi political gal na karna. Don't do any politics in the Gurdwara." Or, you know, the idea of dividing politics versus religion, spirituality versus social life versus economic life, that idea is actually foreign to the Sikh psyche, because everything is integrated, whether it's politics or religion or social or cultural or economic. All of these are inclusive. So the discussion we'll have today will not be confined to one angle of the 1984 or our, you know, the current political climate. It's going to be a very open perspective. We're not going to go into all of this in details, but just to give you a very brief glimpse, you know, even from the time of Guru Nanak, there has always been some clash between the founders of our faith, the community that they created and they developed, with the existing leadership in the spiritual and in the religious and political realms of that time. So many episodes from the times of Guru Nanak, Guru Arjan Sahib's compiling of the Ad Granth, or the Guru, what became the Guru Granth, was a religious and political challenge both at the same time, and which resulted in his martyrdom, which we are going to be commemorating mid-June. The inauguration of the Guru Khalsa in 1699 was a very, very political, as well as a religious, as well as an economic. It was the Nash doctrine that was put in place, that our previous caste affiliations, business affiliations, religious political affiliations all dissolve into the one Akal Purakh ki Fauj idea. And all these times you see is a rising and an ebb of prosperity as well as protests of the Sikh community. 1762, just as a highlight, was a major Holocaust. We call it the Vadda Kalukara. So most of the 18th century was a lot of political and military turmoil. And then relative calm in the 1800s up to 1849. Then coming back in 1947, this is when diaspora and homeland relations really start defining themselves, with the Gadar movement and others in California and in the UK, etc. 1984, this is our current context. For our purposes, we need to focus on the complicated set of events of this piece of the 20th century. As a standard pattern, as I was showing you, there's a Sikh rally and protest. And why do they do this? Why do the Sikhs actually go about and protest and have these challenges to the religious and political hegemony to secure and sustain their independent and sovereign identity? That's my premise here, and I think our panelists may agree or disagree, and we're going to have a discussion around that. But the rally is to kind of sustain that. The sequence of events that happened in 1984, with the storming of the Darbar Sahib complex and the multiple gurdwaras across Punjab by the Indian Army troops, this again was a culmination of these protests. It wasn't one isolated episode. But why did it culminate into that? Because religious and political establishments always fail to relate to Sikhs as an independent nation, an independent Qaum. And that's why these fissures occur, is what I present. And while the post-1984 to 1995, there was a whole genocide campaign. One of our panelists is very, very familiar with that, and she can share something about that as well. So, but worldwide, Sikh population has had some relationship with this idea. Some of our panelists today, guess what? They weren't even born in 1984. Most of them were outside of India, yet they relate somehow to that time frame, and as well as the whole overall Sikh history and identity. So this is what we're going to do, whether it's social, economic, and civil rights of Sikhs everywhere, and not just in the homeland in Punjab, but also in the diaspora. Something, for example, the diaspora, especially in the US, post 9/11, 2001. There are other nuances to the civil liberties, whether they're in Punjab or over here. So all of that has to be interrelated and presented through. So anyway, I'm going to stop there. The final quote from Ratan Singh Pangu in Pant Prakash, he presents, he says, "Avar kisi ko kaan na par hai, raj kare ikke lar mar hai." So the Khalsa is not subservient to anyone. They are either fully sovereign or in a state of constant rebellion. So Khalsa Bagi Ja Badshah. This is a phraseology that is part of the Sikh psyche and culture. So if we're not free, we're in protest mode. And if we're free, then we're in the mode of benevolence for all. So that's where we'll now stop over here. And I want to then start with the introduction of our panelists. Okay, our first, is there any questions at the moment? Probably not. Our first panelist for the day is Rubin Paul Singh. Rubin is based in the East Coast of the United States. He's been a facilitator of workshops on Gurmat, history, and human rights for quite a long time, and I've known Rubin for quite a while. He regularly contributes to online Sikh publications and has his own blog called Spirit of the Sikh. He serves on the board of trustees for the Sikh Coalition. And without further ado, what I'm going to do is introduce each panelist. There are three panelists, and I will give them some time to present their view. What I've asked them to do is not more than 5 minutes. Please share your observations of the post-1984 Sikh affairs. Broad areas of human rights, Sikh sovereign spirit, civil rights, social, economic issues may be covered. It really doesn't matter. This is your opening to reflect on where we stand as a community since the tumultuous times of 1984. So Rubin Paul Singh, really glad to have you on this today, and please go ahead with your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Inderpreet Singh. So the question asked was about the post-1984 era, and I'm really going to focus on the last few months, as I think it is largely symbolic of what we've seen over the last 28 years. Like many, I was inspired by the events that took place this past March in solidarity of Rajoana. Everything from the demonstrations, the SikhRI, the Pledge Orange, social media campaigns, all of this were signs of Panthic unity that ran throughout the various cross-sections of our community. And it has been so long since we've seen that type of unity, even at a superficial level, that it was hard not to feel inspired. But as the end of March approached and the protests were being planned, the realist in me quickly came to the conclusion that this was going to be a blip rather than an actual tipping point. As I listened to the local planners and watched the videos of the protests around the world, there was confusion. Some were expressing solidarity, some calling for clemency, some asking for the abolishment of the death penalty altogether. Some were demanding human rights and justice. Some were calling for a sovereign homeland. We seemed to be all over the place. Our message was unclear. So essentially, we showed up, we came out in droves, but once we got there, we had no idea what to say. And to be honest, when I saw this, I thought to myself, wow, I have failed. And so have many of us who have been running camps and facilitating workshops throughout the diaspora. Personally, I've spent most of the last 15 years, half a generation at camps and retreats, trying to educate people on our recent history and struggle, so that when such an opportunity arose, we would have some type of collective voice. But the result was a lot like our camps themselves. Lots of spirit, lots of passion, but light on substance. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe that the Sikh nation is capable of accomplishing great things in today's environment, given that we have a clear message. Look at the civil rights movement in the United States, for example. I follow the work of the Sikh Coalition, and I see that their civil rights platform is very simple. A Sikh should not be denied any right that has been granted to other Americans. That's it, clear and concise. And it's something that our community passionately rallies around. We donate money for, we volunteer for, we work full-time for, and as a result, court cases are won, laws are changed. We have so many successes to speak of here. So the question is then, what could have been our message for the Rajoana situation? Perhaps that might be a topic for another webinar, but I would suggest focusing on the disparity of the justice system in India. Sure, the letter of the law is being followed in carrying out Rajoana's execution, but why is it not being followed for all those who were responsible for the violence of the 80s and 90s, even where witnesses were present? This is a message that's broad enough that many communities throughout India could support, as well as the academics and other thought leaders within India and internationally. But the more disjointed we are in our message, the easier it is for us to become distracted. Another point I want to note is that Rajoana has really captured the heart of so many of us Sikhs, and it's hard not to appreciate him. You know, he looks into the eyes of death with a smile on his face, and he walks and talks in a way that reminds us of our shaheeds of yesteryear. But with all this in mind, we have to remember that this movement is much bigger than him. You know, we are crediting him for waking up the Sikh nation, but I have to ask, why do we need him to wake us up in the first place? We've been woken up so many times over the last 28 years, with each mini-movement dying out quicker than the last, but still we sit here in 2012 with no meaningful arrests or investigations to the anti-Sikh violence of the 80s and 90s. No policies have changed to prevent such injustices from happening again. Drug abuse runs rampant throughout Panjab. Punjab ranks near the top in India in female feticide. There's prisoner abuse, torture in the jail systems, environmental distress, water scarcity, and farmers of Punjab have been marginalized economically to the point of suicide. We have plenty of issues. Why are we waiting around for Rajoana or anybody else to wake us up? Aren't these issues compelling enough? So the debate has become more about defending Rajoana rather than the issues themselves. And history has shown us that when movements revolve around personalities, they're short-lived. Our movement must be based on principles. Also, what the events of the last few months have reinforced, at least for me, is that our understanding of the issues must be deeper. And that learning cannot begin only when crisis strikes. As I like to say, we can't be reactivists, we need to be proactivists. And that takes work. It takes study, it takes research. And at the camps, I often ask the kids, I ask them, you know, how many of you are passionate about human rights? Immediately all the hands go up. But when I ask, how many of you are members of Amnesty International? You know, how many of you have written a letter on behalf of a prisoner of conscience? You know, how many of you even follow Human Rights Watch on Twitter? I'd be lucky if even a hand is still raised at that point. You know, we want the world to hear our plea for human rights. We are shocked when others don't know about our struggle, but we don't even know how to speak the language of human rights. You know, we need to study and become experts on our struggle. The information is readily available. You know, even the resources on INSAF's website and even these live webinar archives will give you a wealth of information in order to speak intelligently about our situation. Not only do we need to study our own facts and figures, but we also need to understand what's going on in the world of human rights, in China, in Cambodia, Sudan, Rwanda. Until and unless we can talk the talk of human rights in broader terms and how our situation impacts the rest of the world, we're never really going to have a seat at the table. So in summary, if we want the world to listen, then we need to clearly articulate our case with a simple message and back that message up not only with spirit and passion, but with a deeper level of understanding, and most importantly, be able to explain why the world should even care. Thank you.
Thank you, Rubin Balsing. It was a passionate plea for a clear message. The inspirational aspects exist, but it's not consistent, is what I got. And then, you know, a clear understanding of not just Sikh human rights, but human rights from a global or holistic perspective is what Rubin has shared with us. So thank you very much for that eloquent piece. And now I will go to our next panelist. Very honored to have her here. She's actually also been part of a webinar in the past as well. And as I had mentioned, she also attended the Civic Leadership Retreat. Navkiran Kaur Khalra, she is an activist furthering the legacy of her father, the Shaheed Jaswant Singh Khalra. She's working firsthand with different stakeholders in the current struggle for justice. I also would like to publicly congratulate her for graduating with full honors. She's a fellow electrical engineer like me. And Navkiran Kaur, we welcome you again to a live webinar. And as I had mentioned in the past, earlier, if for 5 minutes you can present your view and your unique observations When we chose the panelists, it just ended up, for example, Rubin is from the from the United States, Santbir from Canada, and you're actually most of your life, or all of your life, was from Punjab, and are just currently here in the West Coast. So, Navkiran, would you share with us for 5 minutes the your view on the current situation within the community?
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thanks for having me here today. Actually, I would like to go through the post-1984 events in Punjab, since I'm representing Punjab. So, I was born after 1984, and I was just 10 years old when my father was abducted. All that I saw was, my mother used to say that we lived in the battlefield. There were encounters on streets, everywhere. Police used to search our houses, streets, curfews and all. But what I see, the Rajoana event, Rubin Paul VG has explained it very well, but from my perspective, I link Rajoana and Jaswant Singh Khalra, like the two episodes are actually linked to each other, because what Rajoana did, Rajoana did in assassinating Beant Singh. He assassinated Beant Singh because he says that there were mass encounters, there were fake encounters, there were killings of the Sikhs, human rights violation, which he couldn't tolerate, and the only option he had was to assassinate the chief minister. What Jaswant Singh Khalra did, he said the same thing. There are so many fake encounters, illegal cremations, and he opted for a legal way because he found out that there is a clue, or you can say they have left some marks that can be challenged in the court. So both the episodes are linked. My father was abducted 6 days after the assassination of Beant Singh, and it was on the pretext, the reason given was that it might be because of Beant Singh's assassination. So coming to Bhai Balwant Singh's current situation that was created in Punjab, I have talked to a couple of people.
Navkiran Kaur, we don't seem to be able to hear you. Okay, we seem to have lost her. We have an option of coming in via the telephone as well. We'll just give her a couple of seconds to see if she can come back on. Gurvinder, can you hear her?
No, ji. We seem to have lost her, but let's give it a minute or so, and I apologize everyone for the wait.
Okay, everyone, sorry about that. We're having some technical difficulties. Santbir, are you on and available?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm going to introduce you. Okay, so as Navkiran comes back, and we'll pick up with her, I wanted to introduce, after a long time, we have connected through this live webinar need, and his name is Santbir Singh. He has been teaching and studying SikhRI from a very young age. As I had said earlier, also he represents kind of the Canadian Sikh diaspora. He has helped and continues to help organize and teach at Sikh youth retreats and conferences all across from the west coast to the east coast and in Canada. He currently works for the government of Canada. And Santbir, without further ado, if you could also share your current view and reflect on where we stand as a community, once again, since the 1984 time frame, as well as currently with the Rajoana episode. So go ahead, please.
Thank you, Inderpreet Singh. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. We stand here almost 3 decades from 1984. 3 decades. This year is the 28th anniversary this week of the attack on the Varsat. And I think if we look at our community, both within Punjab and in the diaspora, we demonstrate or we show the signs of a person who has suffered deep trauma. I think if you look at the way our community has responded or continues to respond, it is clear that in a lot of ways the trauma of the events of 1984 and what happened afterwards up to the early 90s have deeply affected the psyche of the community. If we look at the long game of the Indian government or the forces that seek to silence us, it appears that we are on the losing end right now, unfortunately, in terms of Punjab. We all know the numbers of the big issues that our community faces today. I would say that they fall in 3 or 4 categories. Rubin already discussed these, mainly being the issue of female infanticide and feticide, the issue of environmental degradation in Punjab, especially river water and groundwater, and the desertification of Punjab. Talking about the caste disparity that exists within Punjab today. And finally, the issue of drug abuse and alcoholism within the community. If you look at other communities in the world that have suffered deep trauma, for example, here in Canada, I can see the First Nations, or what you call in America, American Indians or Native Americans. They show a lot of the same signs of trauma that we do today in Punjab. We are, in a lot of senses, unfortunately, a broken community. But what was inspiring about the last few months is that there is still a very deep spark within us that is impossible to fully extinguish. And that is what was inspiring about Jaswant Singh Rajoana's case. As Rubin Singh said, the sight of someone who is fully aware of their situation, conscious of being a shaheed or the possibility of being a shaheed, and faces up to that, who stands for something and does not apologize for their actions, who has given themselves for the month. These are such an inspiration to the community that they did light a spark for however brief a time. I do think that it was in many ways an isolated incident, because what we need here are larger sort of concerted efforts within the community. We have capability in terms of manpower and in terms of economic resources, but we lack the will and the desire to really tackle these issues and move forward. One thing that I think I like to look at is from a historical perspective. I see the community has suffered, in my opinion, 3 other major traumas in the past. One would be Banda Singh Bahadur's time, when thousands of Sikhs were killed in Delhi in 1716, the Vadaka Lukala in 1762, when half the Panth was wiped out, or the end of the Anglo-Sikh Wars, where Sikhs lost their sovereignty. In all of those instances, it took us a couple of decades to rebound, but we did rebound. The community was able to move forward, was able to learn from their losses, and was able to grow and flower and demonstrate a huge capability of really striking back and getting those goals that those earlier Sikhs had died for. I think we're on the cusp of something here right now, but we need to break out of one mentality that I see very detrimental to the community, and that is the mentality that we are always waiting for Superman, for example, to quote that movie that came out recently in America about the educational problems within America. We are all waiting for a Messiah. We are waiting for someone to come and solve all of our problems. The fact of the matter is that in the 1850s, Sikhs were broken people after the British took us over. We lost everything. We did not gain anything back through some miraculous event. It was the hard work of individuals on the ground, people committing themselves, people reconnecting to their history, people reinterpreting Gurbani, Gur Ityas, making those connections that were broken and remaking them, building communities amongst each other and tackling the real social issues. There's also an artistic revolution within Punjab at the time, with especially the print media. I think the internet today affords us the possibility, just as it did the community in the 1870s, to really make amazing connections between each other. And I can see growing within the community today a lot of flowering of sort of artistic talent, and I think this can have a very dramatic impact as the community moves forward. What we need to do is we need to realize that all of the successes that the Khalsa Panth has had in the past was not something that came about just by happenstance, but it took hard work, a concerted effort. And it took people making a change within themselves and then spreading that change amongst their peers. And I think we have that capability today. If we look at our issues, we tackle them, and we begin to work on what begins as a small scale and then work bigger, making grassroots movements into Banthak-wide movements. Thank you.
Thank you, Santbir Singh. Your observations from bringing history into the play actually makes sense. I mean, I'm always a big fan of interconnecting and seeing the patterns of historical events, which is why I started with that timeline. And you have presented it in a very succinct way of how that needs to be kind of not repeated, but you know, utilizing the foundations of history to go forward as well. I have a feeling that Navkiran is back. Navkiran, can you say something? Are you? Okay.
Yes.
Good.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we just finished with Santbir, and if you wanted to maybe continue on for another few minutes on your part, I recall we stopped at where you were showing the interconnection between the Sardar Jaswant Singh Khalra and Rajoana episode, and showing that interconnection.
Yes. So basically, je aapa dekhiye ta the court's verdict jehda Khalra case de vich aaya ya fir Rajoana de case de vich aaya. So the Indian judiciary is admitting aaj di date in mid of May there was a decision that more than 100 cops like Punjab police officers will be tried for the extrajudicial tortures and murders they have done. So basically, jiਵੇਂ Rubin Paul ji ne kiha siga ki there is the ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਪਣੀ campaign see that should have been more like ki why is this double standards for the Sikhs and the other guilty people who have killed the Sikhs. या दूसरी side revolves जिन्होंने की चाहे दिल्ली ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੀ या post 1984 in Punjab. So I feel कि Punjab de vich there are so many issues. People have moved forward, but it's not that they have forgotten. Je Kesari da vartara siga, so it was like everyone was surprised कि एकदम एक बंदे जे मौत दियां अखां च अखां पा के जे कहता कि भी मैं हिंदुस्तान दे न्याय दे विच injustice system दे विच I did not believe ते सारे दे सारे जेड़े लोग जो diaspora ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੋਚ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਖਤਮ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਈਵਨ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਆਪ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇੰਟੈਲੈਕਚੁਅਲ ਲੋਕ ਆ ਸਾਡੇ ਹਿਸਟੋਰੀਅਨਸ ਆ ਫਿਲਾਸਫਰਸ ਆ they were thinking ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੁਣ ਬਸ ਕੰਮ ਖਤਮ ਹੀ ਹੈ even they were surprised कि लोग सड़कों पे आने like उन्होंने एक मिनट भी नहीं लगाया कि एक बंदे की आवाज़ पे उठे. So I do feel कि कौम जेडी है वो वेट कर रही है. Definitely हर बंदा लीडर नहीं हो सकता, हर बंदा कौम को लीड नहीं कर सकता. पंजाब ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ स्पेशली ਜਦੋਂ हर रोज नवीं प्रॉब्लम्स है. So एक लीडर ਦੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੋੜ ਸੀ. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਰਾਜੋਆਣੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਐਸਾ ਲੀਡਰ ਵੇਖਿਆ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਲਾਲਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ. He was not politically motivated. He was not having any interest कि ਉਹਨੇ ਕੋਈ ਜਾਇਦਾਦ ਬਣਨੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਨੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਆਉਣਾ ਹੈ. He was ready to die. So पंजाब ਦੇ ਲੋਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਜੁਝਾਰੂਪੁਣਾ ਕਹਿ ਲਓ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰੈਵੋਲੂਸ਼ਨਰੀ ਦੇ ਆ ਸਿਰਫ ਉਹੀ ਪਸੰਦ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਇੱਕ ਅਸਲ ਲੀਡਰ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ. ਬਟ ਜੋ ਸਾਡਾ ਦੁਸ਼ਮਣ ਆ, ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂ ਤਾਂ they are very smart, they are very clever. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਗੇਮ ਖੇਡਣੀ ਸੀ. they saw, they were surprised ਕਿ ਹਲੇ ਵੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਪਿਰਿਟ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਹਲੇ ਵੀ ਜਿਉਂਦੀ ਆ. ਬਟ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਬੜਾ ਵਧੀਆ ਟੈਕਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲੀਡਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਸ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਨੂੰ ਬਾਹਰ ਲੀਡ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ, I mean they had no direction. They didn't knew what we are doing, where we are heading to. So that's the reason कि ਇਹਦਾ ਕੋਈ output ਫਿਲਹਾਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਨਿਕਲਿਆ. But I would say कि it was not a blip totally ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ at least ਅਸੀਂ ਚੈੱਕ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੌਮ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਸਾਡਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਪਿਰਿਟ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਹਲੇ ਵੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ. ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੇਲੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਖੜੀ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ. The problem is कि एक direction देने वाला कोई सही बंदा सानू चाहिए है.
Okay, thank you very much, Navkiran Kaur. So here is emerging kind of a different views on really what's going on here, because Rubin, Paul Singh had mentioned it's definitely a blip, and we lack that, but there's consistency as well. So we lack a clear message. Navkiran Kaur has mentioned that it's not necessarily just a blip, but it can't be probably a full-fledged tipping point as well, that there's a turnaround that's going to be placed. Why? Because another direction or clear messaging needs to be put in place. Santbir saying, Santbir was very clear, says, waiting for Superman idea. So do we really need one leader who will lead us, or should not all of us become and take on that message and pursue it further? So I want to just follow up on that a little bit, and anyone can answer. So it's neither a historical blip, and it's neither a drastic tipping point, but this idea of needing a clear direction and message. That doesn't come out of isolation. Well, what do you guys think, either Navkiran, Rubin, Paul, or Santbir? How is this clear understanding, message, or direction, how is it developed? And who all, it probably won't be one person, who all will be involved in developing this clear message and direction? All of you are unmuted, so you can either jump in, but if not, I can pick someone to start off.
If you don't mind, if I jump in for a second, Inderpreet Singh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I would say that as difficult as it sounds, in a lot of ways, we need to bring this back to ourselves. We as a community have suffered trauma, but I think as individuals we have as well. All of our responses to 1984 demonstrate that, either not wanting to know about it, as many in our community are in that mindset, or being angry about it or hurt by it. We need to work on our own feelings in regards to what occurred in the 84 and post-84 period. But we also need to make those connections to Gurbani, to Sikh history ourselves, and within our own families, within our own communities. And I think out of that, organically, something can grow. I'm not trying to keep it on a very sort of mystical or not realistic plane, but what I'm trying to say is that if we begin within our own communities and allow for these connections to develop, I think that we will naturally see that the community is able to direct its energy. That's what I see happen in previous eras of Sikh history. there was no concerted movement in the 1870s or 1860s that's saying, let's say in 50 years, let's create an independence movement and fight to get the British out of India. Instead, it was Sikhs going out, and people like Gyanendra Singh or Professor Gurmukh Singh or Bhaivir Singh making those connections with Gurbani, making those connections with Sikh history, and sharing that connection with their fellow Sikhs. They weren't looking for leadership per se. And I don't disagree with what Benji Navkiran Kaur said, because I don't think she meant leaders in the sense of someone telling the Panth what to do. I think the type of leaders we need are the leaders like Jaswant Singh Khalra, like Balwant Singh. People who, I would recommend everyone on a regular basis try to listen to that last speech of Jaswant Singh. It's such an inspiring message. It's incredible, and it's amazing to hear someone who knows fully well what the consequences of his actions will be, and is able to demonstrate that with love for Guru, he has no fear of what those consequences are, and he is willing to make that commitment. Even though I don't think very many of us can compare to Gursikhs like by Jaswant Singh, we can try to strive for that deep connection to Guruji. And through that connection, we can hopefully grow. That's what I would say.
Okay. So kind of creation of that message requires individuals to get stronger connection to Gurbani, and then the communities follow up like on their own, and then we see the direction. Rubin or Navkiran, any counterpoint to that?
I would agree with what Santbir is saying. I agree with his point earlier about waiting for Superman. I think if we look at some of the great movements and the great revolutions, it's not because of one person standing and becoming a leader and then everybody follows. It's the work. It's the work of a handful of individuals, and they become leaders throughout the process. So I believe, yes, understanding the facts of today. In that sense, knowledge is power. Understanding the history of yesterday, that's where we get our inspiration. But I can't emphasize his point enough about Barney. I think that's what's really missing most. That reflection on Barney is what's going to take all that knowledge, all that passion, all that spirit, and guide us in the right direction. In fact, even our enemies knew this. Why else would the state have burned original copies of the Guru Granth Sahib during the attack of the Darbar Sahib? So Barney is where the power lies, and I'm surely not making this up. Look at all the greats, the Baba Deep Singhs, the Baba Banda Singh Bahadurs, the Chote Sahibzade, Maipago, General Shabeg Singh. All of these individuals had a connection with Satguru, and I believe this is what gave them the ability to overcome such imaginable odds. So if we ever intend to have that type of will, that type of courage or valor, and that is what we're going to need to overcome the obstacles before us, then we need to create that connection with Barney and bring Barney in our lives. Just one thing I want to be clear about is this doesn't mean that we become Brahmgyanis first and then we worry about the world's problems. No, I believe that Guru Sahib's model of Miri Piri means that our training, our daily training, consists of both elements every day. So being a Sant makes you a better Sipahi, being a Sipahi makes you a better Sant. So we must work on both of these individually in parallel. We can't afford not to.
Okay.
I do agree that it couldn't be one person who can lead the movement. Balwant Singh Rajoana, I believe Balwant Singh Rajoana was not supposed to be the leader of the movement. उन्होंने एक सिर्फ राह दस्या सीगा कि we can challenge the government. He was a role model, but जेडी responsibility सी वो पंथ दी सी जेड़ा बाहर सी जिन्हां ने इस movement नू चलाना सी एक बंदे ने definitely नहीं सी चलाना. It would have been a teamwork, a Sarbat Khalsa. I mean, we definitely need group of people जेडे individually अलग-अलग काम करते हैं. What I feel lacking these days is कि हर बंदा चाहता है कि वो हर काम करे, human rights से भी काम करे, वो गुरुद्वारे की सेवा संभाल भी करे, वो सारा कुछ करे. So definitely groups होने चाहिए कौम दे विच जेडे individually अलग-अलग अपनी जिम्मेवारियां समझन. कोई civil rights से काम कर रहा है, कोई politics से काम कर रहा है. So the problem is कि we want to do everything. जो साडे पंजाब दे लीडरां दी प्रॉब्लम है, लीडर कह लो या जो साडी कौम ने ਲੀਡਰ ਬਣਾਏ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਅਕਾਲ ਤਖਤ ਦੇ ਜਥੇਦਾਰ ਸਾਹਿਬਾਨ ਨੇ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਪੰਥਕ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਹੈ ਉੱਥੇ। ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਮ ਸੰਗਤ ਹੈ, they are very disappointed from whatever is happening amongst the Sikh leadership. Yeah, just even I shouldn't use the word leadership, but they are supposed to be the leaders today. So definitely, जो यानी गुरदित सिंह वर्गी मूवमेंट जो सानू बेस ते काम करन दी लोड़ है, लोकां नू एजुकेट करन दी लोड़ है। पंजाब दे विच मूवमेंट जेड़ी फेस होई है, ओदा मेन रीजन ये सीगा कि लोकां नू पता ही नहीं सी मूवमेंट किस चीज़ दी है। सो जेड़ा ग्राउंड वर्क है, जेड़ा लिटरेचर है कि तुसी लड़ के सी रहे हो, ओदी जेड़ी ओदी प्रिपेयर करना ओ साडी जेड़े लीड करना चाहते हैं या लीड कर रहे हैं, उन्हां दी जिम्मेवारी है।
I see. Great. Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense. What I'm hearing consistently is that there's a focus that's required. The focus is towards us as individuals being associated and having that relationship with Gurbani and Bani. But there's also, Navkiran's last point was about we have a lack of focus problem. Is that कि सारी चीज़ कहना कि मैं गुरुद्वारे का भी करांगा, social भी करांगा, economic भी करांगा, political भी करांगा. So I guess I wanted to follow up. What area should we focus? Should there be one focus, or because remember I presented in the beginning that I believe that this idea of ikonkar really puts everything in kind of an integrative context. So I actually want to now switch this from a question that I got from Salisbury, UK, Amrit Bhamra. He has a couple of points. It's a long question, but I'll take the gist of it. How about online libraries like those of Simon Wiesenthal of the Jews? Or do we have, from the literature perspective, can we not produce someone like Ms. Arundhati Rao, or Roy, I think it is, to really kind of set the narrative and make it clear that what is the movement, what is the focus, what is the story of the Sikhs in the post-1984 perspective. So some of your thoughts on that. I mean, what really is kind of the most important thing that whoever has that talent, but also the passion, where should they be focusing on at the moment? Either one. So I think what came out of this is the focus the Lora organization. In which area should the focus be?
If I can say a couple things on this, I don't know if we can afford to have simply one focus. I think our problems are too broad and their problems are too complicated. However, I'd say that as individually, as we research the problems, educate ourselves on the issues, whether it is environmental, whether it's social, whether it's economic, or whether it's legal, as we research the issues, we are going to find where our focus is. And as far as how do we contribute, this is where it comes to us each individually. I so many times through retreats and camps, I come across people who are passionate about, let's say, environmental issues in Punjab, and they are beautiful writers, but they don't always put the two together and say, well, maybe I should use my writing. Or they're wonderful singers or rappers or entertainers in some way, shape, or form, or poets. But we don't necessarily tie these two things together. So as far as finding the focus, I think that will come naturally out of our education. And how do we then turn that focus into action? What are our talents? What are the things that we like to do? What are we passionate about? And how can we marry that together with the causes for activism?
Okay, good point. So tying the talent with the passions. Santbir?
I would agree very much with Rubin Paul. Is also just to quickly from his earlier point, I can't stress this enough, is that we have to get out of that mentality as well that we hear a lot. Of course we're not going to get sovereignty. Look at the state of Sikhs today. We don't get up at Amrit Villa. We don't do our nickname, so on and so forth. And while that's true to an extent, we can't wait for ourselves to reach some sort of mythical plateau of what we need to be as Sikhs before we can progress as a movement. And that's what it takes also on an individual level. What skills and what things should we focus on? I think we all need to take a step back. within ourselves and see what are our strengths and how can we contribute to the community. And not everyone can contribute in the same way, of course. That is, not everyone has those capabilities, but we do all have something to offer. I think we need to take seriously the message of Guru Nanak Sahib Ji of committing ourselves to making the world a better place in all of our actions, be it through our work, through our volunteer work, through our family life. And we have the capability, we have a lot of time and money as a community. I think we can make dramatic changes, but we need to get out of this sort of waiting for someone else to do the work. And the work doesn't need to be dramatic. There's no need right now for any type of you know, militancy or anything of that nature. I think we can all agree that that chapter is over in our community right now. What we need instead is grassroots organizations that can then build together organically with other groups within the fund.
Okay, interesting. So I have another question from. Let me see the location. Actually, I don't see it's Yadvinder Singh, and he has no mic, so he first presented that he agrees with Navkiran, actually, it says Navkiran, that the Rajoana wave seems to have died, but due to lack of leadership, and it's really because of a common goal campaign. What's the focus? But what he believes is that whenever there has been a single, you know, personality and leader, that's when really everyone rallied behind, whether it's Guru Ka Bagh, Baba Jarnail Singh. Ultimately, the question is, and I'll take it in two ways. He had just said how we should choose our leader in today's context. My question would actually be not how or who, but what are the qualities that we need to look at either these organizations or individual people? Is there someone that is in mind, that we have in mind today? Can we drop a pin on someone today? That's really the question. And I want to hear the views. Maybe Navkiran, is there, other than Rajoana, is there someone that you have in mind, or a group of people who could take on that type of role to rally around?
I think I believe कि जेडे पुराने अपने leaders सीगे या जेडे उस moment के time रहे, I do not expect anything from them for now. ते जेडे young बच्चे हैं जिन्हें इत्थे देख रही हैं या इंडिया के विच भी देख रहे हैं, so it's the whole world सारा भारत ना दे रहा है, उन्होंने विचों ही कोई निकल सकता है, because most of the leaders जेडे पुराने हैं उन्होंने विच कोई ना कोई दाग है, कोई ना कोई उन्होंने विच एक इल्जाम लगता है कि they have compromise with the government or something. But definitely the new generation, or जेडी नवी generation है, उन्होंने अपनी past जेडी ये सारी movement है, उन्होंने एक दफा study करने दी लोड़ा, and they need to come out with better solutions जो सारी पिछली generation जेडी वो नहीं कर सकती.
Okay. So
one more thing, Balwant Singh Rajoana का जो भी episode है, I do agree. एक person के साथ relate करके सानू देखना भी चाहिए. It was not just fancy कुर्बानियां तेरी कौन समझना रही हैं. I mean जे उन्होंने कुर्बानी हो जाए तो शायद movement सच्ची बन जाता. ते but the thing is कि भाई बलवंत सिंह राजोआणे दी फांसी सिर्फ एक इंसान दी फांसी नहीं सीगी. We had to look कि ब्यान सिंह दे time दे दौरान his chief minister tenure दे विच किन्ने हज़ारां जेडे सिख नौजवान उन्होंने मारिया गया, उन्होंने टॉर्चर किया गया, साडियां बीबियां भैणां दे नाल जो कुछ होया. So this fancy episode brought all that back. जेडे सिख माइंड वाले उत्थे लोग बैठे हैं जेडे केसनी दा वतारा करन बाहर आए सड़कां ते. So उन्होंने मानसी एक बंदा नहीं सीगा, बलवंत सिंह राजोआणा नहीं सीगा. It was the whole that era जदों जेडे विचों दी वो निकले सीगे. And बलवंत सिंह राजोआणे ने सिर्फ एक काम किया कि उन्होंने मानसियों को डर काट दिता कि जेड़ा बंदा फांसी दे सकते ਤੇ ਖੜਾ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਕਹਿ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਹ ਠੀਕ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਲਈ ਉਹ ਮੰਗ ਸੀ ਸੋ ਸਿਮਿਲਰਲੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਾ ਕਿ ਬੰਦਾ ਫਾਂਸੀ ਤੇ ਖੜਾ ਇਹ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਸੁਣਾਇਆ ਹੈ ਸਾਡਾ ਇੰਨਾ ਕੁਝ ਬਣਦਾ ਹੈ ਸੜਕਾਂ ਤੇ ਨਿਕਲ ਕੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰ ਸਕੇ ਕਿ ਹਾਂ ਜੋ ਇਸ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਹ ਠੀਕ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਬਿਆਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਦਾ ਬੱਚਰ ਸੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਜੋ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਹ ਗਲਤ ਸੀ ਸੋ ਆਈ ਸੀ ਦਿਸ ਬਲਵੰਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਰਾਜਵਾਨਾ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਐਜ਼ ਦੀ ਅਦਰ ਵੇ ਬਿਆਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਜੋ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਨੰਗਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ
Okay, thank you, Navkiran. Navkiran, I think are you on the phone as well as internet at the same time? Because there's a lot of echo. But so anyway, I think what I got at least in the beginning was that a lot of our quote unquote leaders of the past are somehow compromised in some form or the other, and we have a new generation growing up who were really very, very visible. Visibly supporting and organizing during the Rajoana time frame in March. So there's probably something there. So like I'm saying, and everyone has said, it's probably not one individual, but there's some groups, organizations. Santbir, I agree with you. Probably full-fledged military options might not be what we have to go towards, but there are, given the kind of climate in worldwide events of these Occupy movements or protests, the ability of Twitter and Facebook to get the information across really quick. There's serious organization required there. Plus, it really puts you in front and center against the the current political as well as religious establishments of the countries that you would probably do this in. So having said that, it's a question again from Amrik, which I think is quite pertinent. He says, do you not think that the comfortable life in the West, and by the way, Amrik, I'll forward it to also Panjab. There are certain areas of Punjab that are very comfortable, especially the cities, lulls us into a sense of indifference. So the question is, how do we motivate people out of that complacency? So we can create all the education materials we want, but you can bring a horse to the water, but can you force the horse to drink the water? That's the question. What do we need to do about that problem of the complacency that we have? Rubin, what do you think? And you've noticed it in your camps and the retreats. All the information is there, but if people aren't going to read it, what's the alternative?
That is a good point. It's something I struggle with quite a bit. A lot of the children I work with at camps, they're passionate about it, about the topics, but they're passionate about it in the way they're passionate about a lot of things, and so a lot of that gets lost, and the activism is sort of short-lived. And I think it's because, although they're passionate about the ideals, they didn't live through it also. They don't have that direct connection. They didn't grow up in a time where they got the call, finding out that, so-and-so relative has been, murdered in their shop or has been lit on fire in the streets. They haven't gone through that. So there is that element of emotional connection that is hard to reproduce. As far as, what are some ways to create that? We've talked about the education and the history and the Barney. But some specifics that I've seen has really been documenting the experiences of those who were there. Santbir talked about Jaswant Singh Khalra's last speech. I can't tell you how much I'm inspired by his work and his words, and tremendously. And so that video that can be so powerful from that time, and there are so many people who have experienced 1984 in so many different ways, not only in Punjab but throughout India and abroad. We need to document these stories, and really I think those first-hand accounts has always been a very powerful experience for me, and we must document this through video, through literature, through poetry, through song, in every possible way. I think that is one very practical way that I've seen that create some bonds for those people who are not old enough to have experienced it firsthand.
Okay, great. Santbir and Navkiran, how do we do this?
I think in some ways, even the people that did have a direct connection to what happened, for example, a family that all of us have in Punjab who may have been in areas of Punjab where there was some very disturbing events occur, either in Delhi or within what happened in Punjab in the post-84 period. They actually may have more of a reticence to tackle these issues. I think that we're in a unique position because of that comfort that we have here. It can also be insulting, I know, to people who have suffered through things in Punjab, and we have to be careful. And we hear this a lot when we talk about these issues with our Punjabi sisters and brothers, that who are you to say something? You're living in Canada, you're living in America or the UK or wherever, and you don't know what it's like here on the ground in Punjab. I think that's why maybe we need to start making direct connections to Punjab, doing work there, some type of grassroots movements, building things with our brothers and sisters there in Punjab. I think that can have a very dramatic impact if we are to not come in from that patronizing position that we often find ourselves in very quickly, where we are sort of lecturing down to them. Now, we have to remember Guru Nanak's model of teaching, which is not teaching down, but teaching, you know, on this sort of horizontal plane where you are talking to the other person as an equal. And you're trying to understand what their position is and where they're coming from. The other thing is that how do we make this connection? What do we tackle? I say we need to go back to this amazing gift that we've been given. There's no need for leadership, in my opinion. We have been given the guruship of the Guru Khalsa Panth. We are the Guru of the Sikhs as a collective group. This amazing thing that Guru Gobind Singh Ji has given us, it can be very empowering if we are to really understand what Guruji has blessed us with. And I think if we go back to that original idea of the Sakhi 1699, we can see that a lot of the mistakes that have been made in the community over the last 300 years have been because we turn away from that ideal and we return to the old ideals of looking for a leader or looking for someone to tell us what to do, instead of realizing that we ourselves as a collective are the leadership of the Khalsa Panth, that we are the Guru. This is both a very difficult burden to bear in some instances, but it's also a very inspiring one. We should remember that Guru Gobind Singh Ji bowed down to us in 1699, bowed down to the Panch Pyare, and we have this responsibility now. If we can try to keep that in mind on a day-to-day basis, we can see, like Rubin Singh said, that there are a lot of organizations out there that do very impressive work. For example, right now with the Sikh Research Institute we're speaking to, we're trying to make those connections with Gurbani. We have people like Sikh Coalition or here in Canada, World Sikh Organization, that are doing advocacy group that people can be involved in. They need people. We have people like Insaf in the U.S. who are continuing on the work of what Jaswant Singh started. So there are organizations out there. There's no need for, I think, new organizations. There's need for us to really make a personal commitment in our own lives to support these groups that are already in existence and sacrifice a little and take on that responsibility we have been given.
Okay, thanks. We touched upon right in the beginning on this idea of, you know, getting this information out, but some complacency around it. I have a question from Kaur from Connecticut, United States, and her question, I think, and I wanted to bring this point up in this panel, so it's very timely. Is there a way to work to connect the Sikhs globally via the internet? Is there value in doing that? And I'd go further. I think there's absolutely value. My question start off with Navkiran. Even during the Rajoana episode in March, our brothers and sisters in Punjab were very active on the internet. So much so that after that, I think it was March 28th, there was complete silence because of crackdown on the use of Twitter and Facebook and other things. So question to you, Navkiran, and you're quite savvy with the social media networks over here. What's the value of that? I mean, that's definitely a change of context since 1984, 20, 30 years ago. How can we utilize it to the best of our ability for this purpose of defining the information and disseminating it?
I think if it's just like defining the problem or sharing it with everyone globally, it's fine. But just going aside from Rajoana event, we all have seen Manpreet, the like Facebook, Twitter, the way he had all the election campaign on internet, but we have seen the results. Oh, apni vi election har gaya. So Punjab de log, I mean, internet may be available to them like maybe 20%. Jede log internet te baithe, they don't go to vote. They don't go out to protest. They're just on internet. They're internet jujarus, jede especially Punjab de vich jede main dekh rahi ha na. So जो पंजाब दे विच awareness ठीक है हौली हौली पिंडां दे विच घरां दे even in the cities it has affected ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ news ਜਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ 84 ਬਾਰੇ ਕੁਝ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਸਰ ਚ ਬੈਠਿਆਂ ਚ I knew people who didn't knew ਕਿ ਜੂਨ 6 ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀ so it has changed ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੌਲੀ ਹੌਲੀ knowledge ਵਧਣੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ but I don't see कि immediately मैं कोई result देख सकूंगी कि जे Facebook ਤੇ ਕੋਈ campaign ਚੱਲਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ Twitter ਤੇ ਚੱਲਦੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਲੋਕ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ appreciate ਕਰ ਸਕਣਗੇ ਜਿੰਨਾ west 'ਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਲੋਕ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ so definitely for the people outside Punjab it is helpful ਪਰ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਘਰਾਂ 'ਚ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਉੱਥੇ ਆਮ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਚਰ ਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਐਜੂਕੇਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਊਗਾ internet is not the solution at present. Okay.
Okay. Rubin, Paul, or Santbir, what is your view on the use of internet?
I just want to say that I love that phrase that Benji used. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rubin, Paul. Oh, okay. I was going to say that I just love that phrase that Navkiran Kaur used.
That was
Sorry.
Okay. Santbir, why don't you go ahead first?
I love that phrase that she used, internet jujaru. I think a lot of us are internet jujarus here in the West, in the diaspora as well. And I agree with her. It has an amazing capability to spread a message, to make connections, especially for creative purposes. We see with a lot of people making music, making very powerful videos or photographs today. That can be very inspiring, but the real hard work has to be done on the ground, and we can't get away from that. There's no, even in today's world, there's no change in that. But one thing that the internet does provide us, and we can see you had mentioned earlier, Inderpreet Singh, is that you know, with the sort of Occupy movements, especially across West Asia and North Africa, that these things can quickly spiral out of control in a way that federal governments really can't get a handle on. And I think that we saw a lot of that fear in Punjab recently, where they saw that something happened that they had no control over. If 1984 had happened today, we know that the impact would be so tremendously different, because we would be seeing messages, we would be seeing audio and visual footage of what was occurring there. And the world would not have been able to shut its eyes as it was able to 30 years ago. As we can see in Libya or Syria or Egypt today, that you know, these governments can't act with impunity anymore with what occurs because of the internet. So it does give us a lot of tools, but it doesn't replace the hard work that needs to be done.
Okay. So okay, the internet as far as a tool for information dissemination might make sense, but for rallying and actually getting and making and instigating that change, you're saying that it has to be on the ground, which is what Navkiran also said. Rubin, Paul Singh, would you like to just put a couple of words on this part?
Sure. I mean, I agree with both of my co-panelists here. I think that you're right. The internet, social media doesn't replace the activism, but one thing it does do is it reaches out to a demographic that perhaps may have not been interested in this type of cause. You know, I know doing presentations for many years on these types of topics, it tends to be the same people who show up every time. People who are seeking out what type of workshops or presentations or speeches are going on about 84. So the only people who would show up are the people who are interested. I think the use of Facebook and Twitter and all the different social media is pushing that information out to different demographics who may not have sought it out in the first place. So I think there's value there in maybe helping some of these movements become more popular. But that's just one step. The hard work still needs to be done, as we've been talking about.
Okay, so I think it's not a simple answer to what Inderpreet said. There could be and there could not. So I want to now bring in Gurpreet Singh Deepak. He has a question. It was quite interrelated to this, but Gurpreet, I'm going to unmute you, and if you could maybe just kind of give the panelists or direct it to any one of them on a particular question to take this topic for. If not the internet, then what? So you're unmuted right now, Gurpreet, from Ottawa, Canada.
I just wanted to again follow up. I know we talked about the internet. It's just the idea and the one clear message. I'm finding though with the diaspora, and I know Santbir Singh mentioned like the 3 significant historical events. I think that at that time the critical mass capacity was still centered around Panjab, and I still think it is. But I'm finding that the diaspora being scattered, I think there's the one clear message idea. I want to ask you guys, how do we sort of then mobilize or move to using one pipeline, some kind of a idea around one channel? I think we have so many channels now in this multiverse. It's great that the internet provides a portal into certain things, but one comment or observation is, I feel like this webinar should be attended by 1,000 individuals. Why is there a maximum of 101? I feel like that we have one clear message, but we need to get it out. And I agree that popularizing the message and communicating it through the internet is one way, but how do we assemble? What are some other strategies to continue, and what is that maybe one pipeline idea?
Thank you, Gurpreet. This, I think, because we're kind of running out of time here, I want to have each of the panelists, take about 30 seconds to a minute max to say if there was one thing that we could do in whatever, like he said, whatever domain that we think is necessary. What is it that we should do? So I'm going to go just like the panelists we began in the beginning. We'll start with Rubin, Navkiran, and then Santbir. What is the one thing we can do beyond the internet that way we can assemble? What else can we do to assemble this question?
And I don't know if the issue is as much that we don't have the channels. I think we have more channels available to us than we ever did before. I still go back to the message. I don't know if we have the clear message that we as a community can unite with and go to the world with when it comes to our issues and our struggles. So I would say if there's one thing we can do, it's really leveraging our camps, leveraging our retreats, our gurdwaras, our Gurmat Vichar groups, to have those discussions. If we were given the stage of the United Nations to say, what is it that the Sikhs of the diaspora, the Sikhs of Punjab need to further itself along? What is it that you want? What is it that you're looking for? I think it's crafting that message. I still think we have ways to go there, and I would say that should be the focus of a lot of our forums and our organizations, to really spend a significant amount of time not just focusing on focusing on the facts and figures, but really crafting that message of what we want to bring to the world about our case. I think that's where we need to be spending our time.
Okay. Now, Navkiran Kaur, what else can we do and create this pipeline and movement? What is the one thing from your?
I would say that the whole community needs to unite under one Nishan Sahib. I mean, we should forget our differences because our problems are so zyada बढ़ चुकी हैं that we need to leave our differences apart. Our enemy, साडे दुश्मन नहीं ये सोचते जदों सानू मारना होवे या सानू तोड़ना होवे कि ये जत्थे चों आए टकसाल चों आए पते ते आए गुरसिख है नहीं है. So why should we always discuss like इन्हां चीज़ां दे विच साडी सारी एनर्जी जिहड़ी है वो अज दी डेट दे विच इन्हां चीज़ां च लगी हुई है instead of solving जिहड़े साडे बाहरों हमले हो रहे हैं. Not only physically, but जो साडे literature दे विच या साडे Sikh psyche दे विच जो हमले हो रहे in Punjab या outside Punjab. So ओदे लई सारी कौम नू एक बार सारे differences भुला के we need to stand under one Nishan Sahib. चाहे सानू ओदे लई सब तो पहली लड़ाई साडे अकाल तख्त साहब नू आजाद कराउण दी होवे. So that's my point. We need to be united for now.
Okay, thank you. Santbir Singh.
Just to quickly talk about what Benji said, I think that's an amazing message. We can see over the last few years the Dasam Granth issue, for example. We're so easy to play as a community, and we fall into these traps so quickly. Bantik-minded Sikhs are a tiny percentage of people in the world in terms of Punjabi-speaking people, and we are so intent on dividing ourselves consistently. We need to get past issues that are not solvable and just leave them be and concentrate our efforts elsewhere. I think one way that we can do that is on a very local level. I think we need to create, for example, here in Toronto, we recently, some young Sikhs, we went to a local Christian church and saw how they were able to create this very deep connection within a larger mega church, where they would have these weekly meetings and they would be discussing issues of their religion and being involved also in doing service outside of their own community. I think if we can make connections amongst fellow Sikhs and be involved in local seva, that will then give us the strength to carry on and to move forward. The big problem now is that we go to a camp or a retreat or a conference, or we listen to a webinar and we're inspired for a few hours or a few days or even a few weeks, but it dies off. We don't have something to keep up that level on a day-to-day basis. We can't sustain our SikhRI. I think we need to be able to sustain it, and to do that we need to make real changes in our own daily lives primarily. Secondly, I think we need to make those connections to Punjab. A friend of mine was recently going on about the fact that let's look at Punjab. It's a tiny space. It's, you know, it used to be 16 districts. I guess now it's 22 districts in Punjab. We have the capability of creating grassroots organizations, of going there and working with our sisters and brothers in Punjab instead of just talking on the internet, of creating some type of organization where we can go there and work with a community building activity. I think we have the capability, the skill, and the resources in the community now. I'm seeing a lot of young Sikhs aren't going into those same fields that we always did in terms of education. People are expanding their horizons. We have a lot of young people who are very passionate, who have a lot of knowledge, and who are exploring their passion intellectually through university and through their jobs. And we need to harness those skills for the Khalsa Panth as a whole. So I think starting small in our own communities, which will sustain our SikhRI, allow us to forge a deeper connection, and then making a direct connection to Punjab. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, so I took 3 or 4 points from each. What is beyond the internet, beyond what we've discussed? What are the things that we can typically do? Is crafting the message. You know, I work in the high-tech industry. I'm called a solution architect, and one of the key things I keep telling myself every single day is don't create a solution unless you know what the problem is. Because a solution is something to solve a problem. The problems, as we've discussed, are many, and that doesn't mean that we take them one at a time, but there are some mega trends, mega problems that we can first define, which then results in the message, and then the solutions come as a result. Navkiran Kaur, and she explained it very well. For example, take one small thing, unite. And what is that? It's free the Akal Takht, because a lot of our psyche still remains in the Amritsar Ji de Ishnan, you know, that city Amritsar Jio idea is that's where the SikhRI emanates from, both the spiritual as well as the political realms. So uniting under one Nishan Sahib, and Santbir's continuous theme, and I'm very much in favor of it, and I'm sure other listeners are, is charity begins at home. So if we are strong, our smaller communities, whether it's in Vancouver, Montreal, Sacramento or Washington, D.C. on the diaspora side, and then in each of the districts of Punjab, they got to do their job without forgetting that there's an interconnection. There was a question, a final question that came from Rajvinder Kaur, and that was really the question she was asking. the context, geographical disbursement of all of the Sikhs is so extreme. She was asking things like, what can diaspora Sikhs do about the drug abuses in Punjab, and what can Punjabi Sikhs do about the gang violence in BC, or take any topic. If it's okay, I'll present something on that. I've been of the view many times when in our discussions in our organizations as well as retreats is let's kind of focus on, let the diaspora Sikhs focus on our own issues here, because they're different. That's why I help with the Sikh Coalition or any kind of educational programs for non-Sikhs here in the diaspora. But that's why I'm also part of Sikh Research Institute, which I know has had an impact, will continue to. Like I said, it's the 10th year of SikhRI, on bringing up the Sikhs, the young Sikhs that go to our Khalsa school, the Sunday schools, or by the Civic Leadership Program, where we educate on the realities as well as the history of Punjab. But the hope and desire is that these kids, these young professionals, once they leave our programs, will become relevant in the communities that they exist. At the same time, I believe that just completely isolating ourselves and not having that connection to the homeland, and for me, there are many like me that have spent not more than 2 weeks of my whole entire life in Punjab. And there's some that haven't even stepped foot in Punjab. I know Malaysian Sikhs, there are some of them who have never even flown across that continent and have instead become kirtaniyas and kathavachaks in gurdwaras in Malaysia. So they can be Sikhs, they don't have to be Punjabis, but they have a very strong connection. They call it the Desh, their own homeland when they think of Punjab. So the idea that Punjab separate, Sikh diaspora separate, that's, for me, it's foreign. And this was really the reason today for today's webinar, this panel discussion, where I wanted to bring in multiple points of view on the tremendous amount of activity taking place. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that question. I want to thank all of the panelists as well as all of the attendees. We tried to make it as interactive as possible. Got a few comments from the audience as well. And that's the point of this webinar here, guys, is to make those connections and engage the people. We try to push and say, hey, let's figure out the solution. What is the one thing we can do? But that's not really, I had no expectations that we were going to come out with the 10-year Sikh Khalsa Panth plan. But what I think is clear today, that there's a plan that's necessary. A crafting of a message is necessary. And it doesn't matter what Jathebandi, what Taksal, what your level of commitment to the external and internal articles of faith may be. If you define yourself as a Sikh, there's a role for you to play. And those that have that definition ingrained in them, it's their responsibility to incorporate all shades of Sikhs. And we are now a global faith, a global community, but we still have this unique nationhood or calmness regardless of any geopolitical boundaries around us. So we are bound by language, by, of course, scripture, as well as this sovereign Sikh psyche. So I think hopefully this was something that was useful for both the panelists as well as the audience. I want to thank Rubin Paul Singh, Navkiran Kaur, and Santbir Singh for their time, taking off precious time on a Saturday to share with us, Sikh Research Institute, and everyone else. We will have more webinars I think the panel discussion idea works quite well. I will recommend that we have more of these. And that's it. Let's maybe shake ourselves out of the complacency of doing intellectual analysis, but working from the depths of our soul. as Puran Singh would say, Professor Puran Singh, as we say. So thank you very much, and please provide us feedback. I'll leave it now to Gurvinder to do the closing on the technical details. Gurvinder?
Thank you very much, everyone, for the very informative panel discussion and for the audience for their participation. We wanted to I will launch a feedback and testimonial session, and we would really appreciate it if you can give us feedback on the current session and how we can improve future sessions, and if you can suggest topics that you would like us to cover for future. We would really appreciate it if you can take the time to share that with us. And once again, I wanted to thank the panel for the very informative discussion. And Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.